the cloud. There we go.
Okay. Well, welcome then to the second part of the Open Science Infoshare series. Today we will have a presentation about open access and publishing, the benefits and drivers. And our invited speaker for today will be Iryna Kuchma from OpenAIRE. And I know Iryna from an EIFL Connect workshop we did last year. It was a 2-day workshop, and she provided us with plenty of information about OpenAIRE and its services, and it was really very good 2 days workshop. And so we have lots of content to talk about today. We have to press it not in 2 days, but in 1 hour, maybe even less. So I will quickly finish my introduction and lead over to Iryna. So please, Iryna, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Sarah and Leonie. Good to see you all. So I'll show some slides, and I hope we can have a conversation. But I also, while I'm starting sharing, if you have some burning questions about open access publishing, that's a good moment to ask, so that I can address them in my talk while we wait.
Yeah, and if you want to put questions in the chat as we go through, we can pick them up as well, like at the end.
Thanks a lot. So open access publishing is really a big topic now because there are a lot of changes. So what I want to highlight are some important developments that might be useful for you as people involved in research and also people running infrastructures. So it would be a conversation about open access publishing from the perspective of researchers and perspective of infrastructure managers. And my colleagues from OpenAIRE helped me to prepare these slides. So I'll start with some background information about OpenAIRE project. We are one of open science infrastructures in Europe, and most of my talk will be based on our experiences in Europe, but I'll also mention briefly some work we do in Africa. And with OpenAIRE, we're trying to bridge the worlds where science is performed and science is published. And what we do, we collect information about publications, research data, software, other research outputs like reports, theses and dissertations, books. We also collect funding information about projects. We collect information about organizations. We get this information from 78,000 content providers, and we link this information together in what we call Explore portal, and it's a user interface where you can search for openly available publications, data, software, and other research outputs. And we don't host the content. Content comes from those 78,000 content providers we collaborate with, and they are repositories of publications and data. They are also journals, open access journals or subscription-based journals. For funding information, we get this information from the funders. We also have information about researchers, and we use ORCID for that. This is one of the largest discovery portals that exist so far. So what we have now are 143 million research outputs, such as publications, research data, software, and other research products, and out of them 54 million are open access, and then another half is restricted access, and then there are some publications which are in closed access or embargoed access, and embargoed access means that they will be made open after embargo period ends. And this is an example of an article. So when when you go to this explore.openair, if you find an article, you can see an article itself, and you can either download it from a publisher. It was published in Nature Communications, it's an open access article, or you can download it from your PubMed Central repository. You can also see references that were used in this article, and you can click on them and have a look. If references are other articles that we have, you can have access to them, and then supplementary materials, if any. And this article is related to other objects that we know. For example, if we know that a data set was used to write this article, then there will be a link to the data set. And we're connected to ORCID, so you can click on one of the authors and you can get, you can search for all the publications from that author. And we also integrated initiative for open citation, so you can also see which articles are cited in this article and who are citing this article as well. And we also have information about usage of this article. So, for example, how many downloads or views were on OpenAIRE portal. We also have project landing pages. So, for example, this is our current project page, and you can see short information about the project, and then you can see publications related to this project, research data, software, and other research outputs. And there is also usage statistics about those outputs. I mentioned that we collaborate with content providers. So repositories are one of them, and this is a repository page on OpenAIRE. So you can see that this repository has over 60,000 publications, and we also provide statistics about the use of this repository. And we have similar landing pages for organizations. So, for example, this university participates in so many funded projects, which resulted in over 50,000 publications and then some other research results. So we do this because we have this OpenAIRE research graph, which is a collection of information about publications, collection of metadata, links from publishers, repositories, research information systems, funders, organizations, research communities. And this graph is openly available, so you can just go and download it using our APIs or any other way you would prefer. It's openly licensed, and we're really happy to see a number of services using this information. We also offer so-called research communities gateway dashboards. And one example is our collaboration with UN agencies to build a portal to track achievement of UN development goals and also connect innovators. And another example is COVID-19 gateways that we have. And these gateways are usually topical, so sustainable development goals or COVID-19 or marine sciences, bioimaging, agricultural sciences, so social science and humanities. We have over a dozen of those gateways already. And the way they work, if there is a research community, for example, European bioimaging community, that wants to have like a virtual research environment where they could see all discipline-specific publications in one place, research data, software, and if they can use this as collaborative working space, then they could approach OpenAIRE and we'll be happy to collaborate. So this COVID example is something that we do ourselves as OpenAIRE in collaboration with some curators from health and medical sciences. And that's a place where researchers could search for publications, and most of them, I mean, not most, but like over 1,000, 1,100, no, or yeah, 1,100,000 publications are in open access. That's a number that I was trying to pronounce. And those publications come from projects, COVID-19 related projects supported by 26 funders, and you can limit your search to certain types. For example, if you're only interested in articles, or if you're only interested in preprints or reports, then you can limit your search results. And what I wanted to stress that we have out of open access content, we have 94,000, well, almost 95,000 articles, openly available journal articles, but we also have over 11,000 preprints, non-peer-reviewed versions of articles yet. And I think when we speak about open access and publishing in COVID-19 times, this change in perception of preprints is something that we should mention. And it was interesting that Europe Med Central is a discipline-specific repository for life sciences, and in July, this year, they started indexing preprints. So you can see an example of their COVID-19 collection, where they have over 15,000 preprints included in the search results. And of course, they are clearly labeled. You can see it says preprint, and there is also a notice that this publication isn't peer-reviewed yet, or might not be peer-reviewed yet, but we can see that preprints are really becoming integral part of scholarly communication if we talk about rapid sharing of research results. Another interesting development in COVID-19 times is the importance of preprints for funders. This spring, European Commission released guidelines to projects that support COVID-19 research. And the second recommendation is to make research findings available via preprint service before journal publication. And that's something that was never included in recommendations to grantees before. And then, of course, there is a standard recommendation to make publications openly available at the latest, at the time of publication. That's a difference, because with non-COVID-19 related research, there is certain embargo periods that projects could have. With COVID-19 research, there is a request to share immediately, and also to share under an open license, Creative Commons Attribution license, which is recommended. And then also an important addition that if any research output requires specific tools or instruments to reuse research results, then information about those tools and instruments should also be available together with publications. And these are standards requirements from the European Commission, non-COVID related, and they are more or less aligned with requirements of other European funders. So usually what funders say when they talk about open access, they require depositing project-related publications in a repository and ensure open access after certain embargo periods. For the European Commission, it's 6 months for science, technology, and medicine embargo period, and 1 year for social science and humanities. Yeah, these are more details about the requirements. So depositing should be done at the latest of publications, but open access could be provided either immediately if possible, if it's an open access article, or 6 months for STM and 12 months for social science and humanities after publication. What we also have in OpenAIRE, we supported Zenodo, which is a shared repository for anyone who might not have an institutional or subject-specific repository, but would still like to make research results available. And actually in Zenodo, there is no requirement to provide open access. So you can either upload open access publications or data or software, or you could choose embargoed access or restricted access. So it's really up to a researcher how to define this access mode. And what I wanted to show is that we have communities, and communities is a space which you can set up for your project or for your organization. And you see some examples. So for example, Biodiversity Literature Repository is a community on Zenodo, and it's curated by this biodiversity community. It's like a mini repository that you could have, and it's free. And this is an example from the Human Brain project. So it's a space where they upload software, journal articles, data sets. I mentioned this requirement to provide open access via repositories. And of course, ideally, we would like to have publisher PDFs in the repositories, a version of article, a version of records that was published in a journal. But unfortunately, a reality is that not many publishers allow that. Of course, if it's an open access publisher, then a version which is identical to a published version is uploaded to the repository. But if a publisher doesn't allow that, then usually it's a version which is called postprint or author's accepted manuscript, and it's a version which is, in terms of content, is identical to the version which is published as a journal article, but layout might be slightly different. So for example, maybe there are no page numbers, or usually in an article you have text published in 2 columns, and here it would be just a document with a text. But even with that, the problem is that sometimes authors don't keep these versions after peer review, approved publication. The moment they receive a final version from a publisher, they destroy this postprint version, or they lose it. And to try to solve this problem, there was an initiative earlier this summer from Coalition S, and Coalition S is a group of funders mainly in Europe, but there are also funders from North America and some African countries, and a funder from Jordan. They issued a call, which they called Rights Retention Strategy, to safeguard this researchers' ownership on the version, on this post-print version, and to try to suppress this unreasonable embargo periods. Their call, their rights retention strategy, basically says that author accepted manuscript should be immediately deposited in an open access repository with 0 embargo period and with an open license to make it easier for machines as well to understand that it's an open version of the article. There was a call to publishers to sign up for this rights retention strategy, and the deadline was in October. So we should hear in the coming weeks how many publishers confirmed that they will be compliant with this call. And I think it's really a positive development, and I wish publishers would say that it's not only for the research which is funded by those funders who are part of Coalition S, but it's also about any other version of article published by any researcher in ideally any journal. Because having the right version of an article that could be uploaded in the repository is really a stumbling block for the open access movement. When we talk about open access publishing, and by publishing I mean like really publishing in a journal, getting this peer review stamp, some publishers charge so-called article processing charges. So if we look at global number of open access journals, over 70% of open access journals wouldn't charge those article processing charges. But unfortunately, those journals where researchers would like really like to publish, researchers from Europe, most of them do charge. And funders say that article processing charges are eligible costs, but they should be budgeted in the project proposals. There is an open APC database that provides some estimates how much an average APC is, but maybe that's something for a project to think about if project plans some publications, and if your researchers already know where they would like to publish at the project writing stage, it would be good to check this amount of APC and try to include it in the budget. But of course, amounts are high and they're getting higher and higher, so there will never be a way to publish all articles as open access articles in journals that charge article processing charges. So there are also interesting developments among funders, and these are funder publishing platforms. And Open Research Europe is a funder publishing platform that is being launched by the European Commission. Article guidelines have been made available already, and a call to submit articles was released, and it's expected that first articles will be published early next year. And this is a platform where any researcher that receives funding from the European Commission could publish in, and there are no article processing charges. So all the costs, like publishing costs, are covered by a funder, by the European Commission. And this model follows examples from the UK, Wellcome Trust, which is the largest biomedical funder, private biomedical funder in the world. They have this kind of Wellcome research publishing platform for a couple of years already. And this platform now is the most popular publication venue for Wellcome Trust grantees. There is a similar publishing platform at Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And the way it works, so a researcher submits an article, and this article undergoes some initial checks, and then it's made available as a preprint, and then open peer review takes place, and then this peer-reviewed label is added to an article. So these are some of the pre-publication checks that Open Research Europe does. So they check for plagiarism, ethical, editorial guidelines. They make sure that data is available, because that's if data was used to write an article, data availability is a requirement. And then if this article includes software, then there is also a recommendation to make that software fair. And then when these initial checks are done, this article is made available as a preprint. And then peer review takes place online next to an article. So you can see that this is an example where reviewers already submitted their reports, and you can see who reviewers are, and you can see that authors revised a version based on feedback from peer review, so it's already version 2, peer review 2, and you can also see whether it's approved or approved with reservations. And peer reviewers' reports themselves are also available next to the article, as well as responses from authors. So I think it's really an interesting example of a publishing platform which doesn't charge article processing charges, which practices its open peer review, and which also promotes availability of publications and data. And this kind of publishing platforms are managed by F1000, which is part of Taylor and Francis. Another way to try to avoid article processing charges, because like I mentioned already, even if you have lots of budget, you won't be able to budget for all the articles to be published, paying article processing charges, because that's way too much. Library consortia negotiate framework agreements with publishers, and they are called Transformative Agreements. And those agreements include access to subscription-based content, plus publishing in open access for researchers from institutions or countries which are part of those library consortia. And when these framework agreements are negotiated, so ideally negotiations are not to have cost increase. So for the same amount of money that countries or institutions are already paying, they could have this open access publishing option. When these agreements are in place, and as you can see, there are many agreements in place already, then authors don't need to pay article processing charges. So again, like if we talk about current problems with open access publishing, I think article processing charges is one of the problems, but I'm glad to see that there are some ways to solve these problems. Sorry, I got a pop-up message. So another problem, and here we're coming to infrastructures, which should be part of your area, is that unfortunately it looks like there is not much diversity left in current scholarly publishing and communications. And together with my colleagues, we issued this call for action to support bibliodiversity. And by bibliodiversity, we mean diversity, inclusion, and equity in scholarly communications. And the idea is that healthy ecosystem is healthy when it's really diverse, that any types of concentrations are not really healthy. And it's based on French call for open science and bibliodiversity. And in this call for action, we list some of the current problems that we have in scholarly publishing, that English is still the lingua franca, and it shouldn't be the case for all publications. Unfortunately, we see this concentration of infrastructures and services in the hands of, I don't know, 5 big or 6 big companies, and it's not healthy for the market. There are also limited funding models, and in this COVID times and budget cuts, probably smaller publishers would suffer more than Alone Society publishers and bigger publishers. It's really important to consider how this kind of diversity could be maintained in the system, and then a narrow focus on journal-based measures, because it's been already confirmed a number of times that we must really look beyond citations or any other quantitative measures and look at the qualitative information, and really apply qualitative models of evaluation that would respect regional and disciplinary diversity. So in this call for action, we advocate for funding and supporting local, national, and regional open, interoperable infrastructures and services, adopting community governance models for these infrastructures, and developing frameworks that ensure that policies, incentives, and fundings are really aligned with local and national research priorities and not driven by the agenda of big publishers. And related to that, we prepared a statement about Open Science Africa, and that's the second part of my talk, to show a couple of slides how we would like to approach principles and actions for global participation in Africa. And in these principles, which were developed together by African NRANs, RANs, and library consortia, which work together in an initiative which is called LIPSANS. We stress this existing inequalities in scholarly communication and the need for more equity, diversity, social justice. We stress the need for Africa-led and operated open infrastructures. And I think here you can put, instead of Africa, you could put Europe-led or Asia-led, because I think it's really important that research infrastructure should be in the hands of research communities, and they should be public, and they shouldn't be outsourced to commercial service providers, because then there is a danger of lock-in and other dangers. And then we also stress the importance of local knowledge. And what we've been advocating for now is this global, long-term, non-commercial, open source, if possible, scalable and sustainable transformation of scholarly publishing to make sure that all researchers, regardless of field of research, whether this research is funded or not, regardless of career stage, could publish their research. And some principles that we outlined for what we described as Africa-led and operated open infrastructures, and importance of local publishing, and importance of multilingualism, and diversity of formats. It's also good to see that these recommendations are aligned with current developments in UNESCO, because UNESCO now released an open science policy recommendations, which were sent to 193 UNESCO member states in their draft form to get some feedback. And when accepted, they would be the basis for national scholarly communication policies. And I really like the broadness of these recommendations, because this is how they define open science. So they include like all the obvious: open access to publications, open data, open source software, open hardware, open evaluation, open science infrastructures, open educational resources. But they also added open engagement of societal actors and openness to diversity of knowledge. And this is where openness to indigenous knowledge and openness to all scholarly knowledge and inquiry is included. And I think it's really a good example of having a broader look. And these are some of the recommendations that are included. There is also a list of actions, like what governments should do to support open science infrastructures, for example, or to develop an enabling policy environment, or to change their research assessment approach. And I'd like to highlight this last sentence of the slides, that it's really like in COVID times, but also just this is really the right time to move away from competition to collaborations, and from having to sharing. And if you're interested in this open community-run scholarly communication infrastructures, we had a webinar where we discussed what could be community governance models for those infrastructures. And we had an interesting case from Director of Open Access Journals, which already practice that. And we also had a webinar where we looked at equity and inclusion in open science policies. And we had a speaker from China, because, like, you know, China is big and they publish most of research papers now. Like, China is the largest publisher in terms of number of researchers that publish papers and number of published papers. And this year they changed their research assessment approach, and they said that they are not interested in any rankings or any indexes. They're not looking into Web of Science or Scopus to check the quality of journals. It's really up to a paper, like whether a paper is innovative enough, whether it advances science. So it doesn't matter whether this paper is really published. And it should really address local issues and solve problems, but it's not a journal brand they are looking at when they assess researchers. And there are similar developments in Latin America now. They had a forum last week to discuss changes to research assessment. And my last slide is about from research assessment to schools. And schools are like really secondary schools or even primary schools. And these are some of the activities that we also have in the OpenAIRE project. And like, to me, they are one of the most rewarding activities, because what we have, we collaborate with schools to collect seismic data. So these schools are based in places which are affected by earthquakes, and they have seismographs installed in their schools. They collect data. The idea is to develop an early warning system for earthquakes, and results of their work related to seismic data, but also any other students' research, are published in what we call Open School Journal for Open Science. And it publishes research from primary to secondary schools level, also high schools in all areas, all languages, and that's a really moving example when Greek students, school students, like secondary school students, analyze data which they took from Kepler Space Telescope, and they identified a new exoplanet, which they described for the first time. And I think it's really great if students could practice open science from early years. So that was everything I wanted to share with you, and I'll have a look at
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Iryna. So we didn't have any questions come in on the chat, but I was interested whether, you know, everyone knows all the concepts about gold and green open access, the APCs. I don't know how familiar this area is to you all, so it might be worth just hearing a little bit from the audience on what you're already doing in your NRENs related to open access, and that might throw up some questions. I don't know if anyone's willing to share what you already do. Dragana, maybe put on your video. I don't mean to like push anyone into talking.
I can share, but I don't have much to share. I'm interested.
Yeah, but that's fine.
I'm interested in this content, I would say, because of my personal curiosity and my personal research. And although I am familiar with all the open access concepts, I am also interested as much as you in how NRENs can support the open access. I don't know, because we in CARNET, we are not involved as yet in the open access initiative. So this, what I'm seeing in the last couple of years, that there is more and more discussion about open access. And I don't know, 10 years ago, I would say maybe also pessimistically, this was a lost cause. You know, the publishers are too strong for that, but I see that the progress is really happening. I don't know if we have reached the critical mass, because I think this is the important part, to have the critical mass of open access journals where you can really publish your research and being satisfied, you know, content with that, not thinking that you have missed something because you haven't published in well-known closed journals. Well, there is of course the risk that the APC will, you know, cover somehow this new way of doing things and mask it in the old kind of processes. You know, that there are really many financial burdens for researchers and their institutions in there. I'm really interested in what Iryna showed us, the Chinese and Latin American examples. I think this could be really something that moves this discussion way forward. But I don't know, what about the language? Iryna also mentioned the language, you know, there is a pressure on researchers to publish in English, of course, but what about these initiatives from China and Latin America? What about the languages there? I mean, if China is in this, it will be a huge, you know, disruption, but still I'm thinking about the language.
China, they said that they're not pushing for English language any longer. So they said that if you want to publish as a Chinese in our local journals, fine, publish that. But we had a discussion when we had this webinar with a colleague from China. We had a discussion how much it costs to actually look at every article and evaluate the quality. And of course, in China, they have people and resources, but we had a colleague from Serbia who was saying that all these journal databases are really so popular because it's easy and one person can just check a number. They are not fair, but it's easier. So we need to find a way how we in Europe could do this. And there are positive recommendations from Science Europe or from European University Association that countries and universities should find new ways. But it's really it's really up to countries to define those new ways. And going back to the roles of NRANs, I would say that NRANs should play a major role in managing these open infrastructures, or providing cloud storages for national journals portals or national repositories portals, because you have, like, you know how to do it. You are public entities. You have collaborations in the country, so you're already collaborating with universities. And there are some examples where NRANs provide this kind of hosted services for repositories or for journals portals. But I think it's also about participating in policy discussions and kind of shaping national policies.
Yeah. We've actually got a question in the chat from Olga, which I think picks up on this point. So she's asking about whether you could say more about, you know, the level at which transformative arguments are done. So in France, it was on a national level. I guess the reference here is to the open science policy at the national level as like an agenda that's been put together. In other countries, it might not be as coordinated, more institutional driven. Do you want to speak to the question, Olga, or? No? Okay, that's fine.
So I know that most of them are really national agreements, because as a country you have more negotiating power with a publisher. But in North America, for example, where they don't really have strong national consortia, or where they have many consortia negotiating with publishers, there are universities that entered into this transformative agreements. But of course, it's also, if you are from Norway, where you already pay a lot to publishers, you have much more negotiating power than if you are from Serbia, for example, where you have discounted access to subscriptions, and then there is not much you can negotiate on this transformative level.
Iryna, may I ask, but who is that juridical person who is negotiating? So it's a ministry, it's some funds, so I cannot understand who is at a national level can negotiate these things.
Successful ones were negotiated by rectors' conferences. So usually, like in Nordic European countries or in Germany, it's a group of rectors where oversees national library consortia negotiations, and they are the ones negotiating with publishers, because again, rectors have more weight in publishers' eyes than librarians.
Yeah.
But there are also transformative agreements which were negotiated by librarians. So in our partner countries, we have some transformative agreements in Lithuania, for example, which were negotiated by Lithuanian Library Consortium. And they have support from their rectors, but it wasn't head of rectors conference who sat with publishers.
Are there other questions people would like to ask around open access and work on a national level, or potentially like the role of the NRANs in this?
Yeah, I have a question. So you showed your activities in all around the world. So China, Africa, South America. Are there any white spaces which you have not covered yet, where you still want to go?
Well, it was like Latin America. I was invited to participate in those discussions, but I'm not the one driving those discussions. So as OpenAIRE, we work in Europe and mainly focus on Europe, and as EIFL, we work in Africa and Southeast Asia. So we work in China. We were part of developments in China. So, we don't work in
are there particular countries or areas of the world where the open access movement hasn't really got off the ground yet, though? It feels like it's become a very global concept and initiative, but are there areas where you think it's more behind?
Yeah, there are still many countries where we're behind, and it's also, it depends on country situations. because we have some successes in countries with centralized scholarly communication systems like China or Ethiopia, where it was enough for a funder or a ministry to decide and start the movement, and then everyone followed. And then we also have successes in Southern African countries where it's even hard to think about centralized developments because universities are really autonomous and they don't want to be told what to do. But I think now there is already a critical mass of movers, like librarians or NRANs interested in this topic. So I think now it's really a good moment to make some changes. And I see Nina's hand.
Yeah, Nina's hand's raised. Do you want to ask a question?
Actually, I just wanted to make a kind of a comment. You know, that certainly in Ghana, and okay, it's my observation, certainly in English-speaking West Africa, I mean, people are very interested in open access. But then what are the reasons why people are interested? Because they basically want what is free or cheap or whatever. So they're kind of money issues, which I mean, Iryna knows very well. But then you have the opposite side where you have academics and researchers are still rather stuck, in my view, in kind of views of where you publish that belong to sometime in the 20th century, like the middle of it. Not even, you get people who are assessing other researchers who will vaguely go online, but they would prefer that somebody does the going online for them. You know, they're still very, very conservative, you know, and therefore looking to have people publish in what they consider to be the top journals or tier 1 journals or whatever it is. And so there's a lot of different things going on. I mean, it's my view that in some ways librarians are kind of enthused about open access. The academic and research community, I think it's kind of mixed still, at least my experience in West Africa. Maybe East Africa, Southern Africa, they're a little bit more advanced. That's my view.
I don't know if you want to speak to that, Iryna. I mean, I can understand why things, you know, can be a little bit backward, because I think even though we've got the policies and the infrastructure, a lot of the incentives aren't there, you know, for open access publishing and for people being open in general.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that there is this push to publish because it's impossible to publish 2 or 3 articles a year, especially like now in COVID times when you have to balance all other elements of your life as well. So I think this push to publish should go away. It should be like in the Netherlands, for example, where they changed their research assessment system, saying that if you're an excellent lecturer, that's fine. You would still be promoted or rewarded because you are an excellent lecturer, and you don't need to publish these 3 papers a year as you had to before. And if that approach is followed, where person's excellence is tracked according to the person's story, like if, again, in GÉANT University, for example, they said that they won't be evaluating researchers every year. They will only do this every 3 years, and it would be up to a researcher to present what they did in 3 years and tell the difference they made. And this difference might be journal articles, or it might be something else. It might be influence of research on policies or some other developments, or like in our Eastern European example, I think if you publish in your local language, I think that's also something that should be rewarded, because like Croatia is an example where there are hundreds of journals published in Croatian, And the reason they are published in Croatian, because you want to have conversations about research topics in your local language, in your national language. You want to have this kind of conversations going on in schools, and you can't have conversations if you don't have terminology, and to have terminology you have to be published in these journals in Croatian. So I think that's also something that should be acknowledged and rewarded. In Eastern Europe we have more problems than in other countries because of those languages. Problems, but it's also opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I see Elizabeth needs to leave, and I'm conscious we're coming up to the hour. So does anyone have any final questions for Iryna? Just raise a hand or pop in chat if you'd like. No? Then all I'd like to do is just thank you hugely for coming, especially at the current moment, and for the ideas that you had around the role of the NRENs and ways that it can support open access. And yeah, we look forward to collaborating more with OpenAIRE in the future. I think there's a lot of overlap in the kind of work that each group's doing, and a lot of things we can leverage off each other.
Thanks a lot, and looking forward to that, Sarah.
Yeah. Take care, and thank you everyone for attending, for all the questions, and speak to you all soon.
Thank you. It was a great